Hello and welcome to Console Shock Retro Modern Gaming Chat with me, Trev and Stu. How you doing, Stu?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, Trev. Really well. Excited about this episode. Want to give my opinions.
Yeah, I guess we might as well sort of dive in, really, because we had it's something we've speculated about. I don't know if we've actually mentioned it on the show previously. We probably have. Well, I don't listen to our show. It's one of the worst podcasts around, isn't it? Do you listen to the show?
What show? No.
Ours.
No.
That's a definite yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've probably mentioned it before, is basically what I'm saying. But yeah,
well, if I remember,
yeah,
someone, I'm not going to mention their name, sort of claimed they knew someone and sort of suggested that it might happen, if you remember.
I think I know who you're talking about. I think he's kind of the person that shall not be named, shall we say?
Exactly.
Just to be
people
safe.
Always give us downvotes and things like that when we mention him. So
yeah,
we're gonna
it's a perpetual video that never dies, shall we say?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
It's our most popular video on YouTube.
Probably it will be forever as well.
Yeah.
At the moment, our Sonic R video is just about staying at the top there, but with this other one,
we're not talking about the Sonic R one. We're talking about the second most popular one.
Yeah, I don't think TJ Davis has an insight into new consoles that are coming out. So yeah, it's not hers, but you can work it out. You can work it out.
You can work it
probably.
out. You can work it out.
But yeah, I think you're right. In that video that we're not going to go too much into, it was alluded to that there might be based off what we've seen with the at that point sort of fairly new. I think it was new around that time, the Commodore 64 Mini, and ultimately we got a Maxi. We were sort of saying, oh, wouldn't it be great if there was like an Amiga version of that? Because that's probably something that maybe would appeal a bit more to me and you. We're quite.
I think it would, yeah.
Yeah. We're quite big Amiga fans. We talk about the Amiga a hell of a lot on this podcast. It might even be the system that we probably talk about the most. I'm tempted to say.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we always thought that an Amiga Mini would be what would appeal to us. I mean, quickly touching upon the Commodore 64 Mini. I mean, obviously it's been out for a little while now. I think it's fairly well understood what it can and can't do. We've had the Maxi. It's not really called the Maxi. It's just the C64. I've been tempted to get one myself. I've seen it. It's fairly commonplace now. Like
I think you can easily find the Commodore 64 one, not a problem. So,
have you got one? Have you bought one?
Good, and you can install ROMs to it. And
yeah,
I've seen plenty of people on YouTube using it, and I think 99% of it's been very positive.
Have you actually been tempted to buy one yourself, either the Mini or the Maxi?
I haven't, and I haven't. No.
Is it just like the C64 doesn't really have any kind of appeal particularly to you, or?
I never had one back in the day, so
yeah.
I'm not sort of yearning to I want to play that game that I used to play. And I remember a few friends had them, and they're always very good machines and things like that. But it was. I don't think it'll quite get as much use as maybe like a Spectrum Mini.
So you would go for one of them if something like that did come out?
Yeah. I'll potentially go for a Spectrum one.
Yeah. I'm tempted to get the Commodore 64 because I have a Commodore 64. I've got fond memories of it as a kid. It was the first system I ever played out of any video game thing ever. So yeah, it's something that appeals to me. I've got an actual Commodore 64, the sort of later C64C version, but it is a bit of a ball ache to set up. Obviously, any kind of those sort of computers where the wedge shaped keyboard all in one unit, so that the 80s and the 90s, they kind of lend themselves more to being set up at a nice little desk with its own monitor, not something you'd sort of shove in your man cave in the Kallax with the other consoles. You kind of need it to hand, shall we say. And just the the annoyance of getting a right cable to kind of get it working on a modern TV, having a tape deck connected to it, or the data set unit connected to it, having the cassettes themselves, which may or may not work these days. there's a whole bundle of sort of shiznit that could be quite, you know, annoying to get going. So that's why the Maxi appeals to me, because it's like basically a full size Commodore 64. It's basically, if you're going to mod a Commodore 64, and people have done, to play a bit more nicely in, you know, to I don't know, sort of quality of life stuff, which people do. You know, they have gadgets that plug into it that let you run things off an SD card, go to a HDMI connection. It's basically all of that all built into something that looks exactly the same.
Yeah, because I think that was my reservation about the Mini one, because I quite, you know, often I remembered lots of the games on well, the Spectrum and the Amiga and Commodore 64. That you need a keyboard.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
no getting away from that. You need a keyboard, and I'm sure it had a solution for, you know, bringing one up on the screen, and then you can move the arrow around and then input that way. But it was it's not quite the same, really.
Yeah. So yeah, the Mini didn't really appeal to me. I mean, yeah, you could get around the lack of a keyboard, as you say, with the on-screen keyboard. But yeah, I do like the idea of the larger one. It'll be a good solution for me to when I want to dig into some Commodore 64. It's a great thing. I can just break out, go straight into the HDMI on a TV. I think there's ways that are fairly easy to get, like disk images and tape it images running on it just through a USB. So there's no issues really with it's actually a better solution than an original Commodore 64. It really makes a real Commodore 64.
But what about, obviously a lot of people talk about with the original Commodore 64, you know, the SID chip, you know, the sound, it's got a certain sound, and people have said even with the Commodore 64, the C one, the newer one of the two, not the bread bin, that has a slightly different chip. And people are like, oh, it doesn't sound quite as good. It's not as loud, and things like that. So I'm not saying that would put me off, and I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But is there a difference with the Mini and the sound on it?
I'm not aware of that. I haven't seen anybody talk about that really. I did watch. I mean, this would have been like, I think, God, it's about 2 years ago that came out now, wasn't it? I think the C64. So yeah. Well, I remember watching who did a video on it. The 8-bit guy did a really in-depth video, and I think he went as far as to measure the sort of SID chips and everything. I don't think he noticed any huge difference that would put anybody off. So yeah, I think from that perspective, I don't think that's an issue either. So basically, it's, I mean, I'm sure if you there are probably some real hardcore Commodore 64, you know, people that have to have it 100% perfect might find an issue with the sound in some way. But for like me and you, we just want to whack it in the telly, but break out some of our favorite games, and that's it. As long as it sounds 90% like. It's not like, you know, a good example is some of those terrible Mega Drive handhelds and, you know, Mega Drive plug and play systems we got in the 2000s. And now that's kind of been perfected.
What was it? The At Games one?
Yes.
I don't know if you saw my tweet. I did. But Sonic, this quickly off point, but Sonic Yoda, who was on here a little while ago, from the, I think, Sega Driven channel.
Sega Driven.
I think and he did a really good video about the portable At Games Sega Mega Drive, and in my opinion, they're rubbish. They're no good at all. Don't buy one. Waste of money. But someone's actually created a special BIOS for it, sort of like an update, and then you can load your ROMs onto that, and it's not perfect, but it does improve things. And I was like, oh, and I was like, I might. I was like looking at trying to buy one, and then it was like, well, you know, it does make a real good improvement, but it's not quite perfect. So I was like,
those little tiny little handheld At Games, it's one of those works on those.
Yes, someone's released some sort of BIOS, so he's done a cracking video on it of not showing you how to do it, but actually showing the performance upgrade you get and how much better the sound is. And you know, it's still not perfect, but it's better. So if you want to have
Oh,
one of
nice.
those and play it with, dedicated 6 buttons and things like that, I would certainly, well, I mean, the 20, 30 quid on eBay, and then you've got to update it. So it's not a huge cost
Yeah.
to get into it.
Well, that's kind of cool. I mean, that's obviously a lot cheaper than the Mega Drive Mini, which isn't that expensive anyway. I know like the variations of the actual Mega Drive that were made in the 90s by Sega themselves have differences in the sound. The Mega Drive 2, I think, sounds a little bit better or a little bit different. Sorry, not better. Maybe some people might think it's better, but yeah, it sounds different to the original Mega Drive. Just because they would source different versions of the chips. One company maybe stopped making them and they had to go to another one to get their version of the same chip, which might have be slightly different, would cause variations like that. But yeah, basically going back to the C64, I don't think there's anything dramatic in terms of the sound. But I haven't got one yet. It is something that I'll be looking at. They pop up in there's a gadget shop that's fairly common in shopping centres and retail areas in the UK called Menkind. They always seem to have them in. Yeah, and they also have remote controlled helicopters and funny little gadgets and little arcade machines. A lot of it's kind of tat and kind of crap, but they do have sort of the odd decent sort of thing, and they seem to stock them fairly readily. I was in a shop over the weekend and they had the C64 in there, but they're about 100 quid.
100 quid. Okay, that's not too bad.
It was more actually. It was about the Mini was cheaper, was under 100 quid, but the Maxi was, I think, it was about 120. Ish. Still not too bad. I mean, it's you'll pay more these days for a decent condition original. But yeah, so there's been the C64. It's pretty successful. They made a mini version. The company themselves, who made these, Retro Games Limited, are the ones that are responsible. They made a mini. They made a full size version with a full working keyboard, which is the one that probably me and Stu would want to go for. But now, last week, we're sort of talking about this on the 13th of August. Unfortunately, we won't get the episode out, right on that day. But announced earlier this week, I think Wednesday, the 9th or 10th of August. The same company, Retro Games Limited, announced the A500 Mini. And it's literally, just to give a super quick summary before we kind of deep dive into our thoughts, it's literally a miniature replica of the Commodore Amiga 500. I think it's the people have done comparisons, and I think the original tank mouse, it's only slightly bigger than the original tank mouse.
Okay.
And you get basically also a recreation of the tank mouse, and you also get a joypad that looks very similar to the Amiga CD32 pad. Interestingly, it has 6 buttons and a similar kind of shape.
Yeah.
So what are your what's your hot take on what you saw with it?
First off, I saw it, and let's do all the positives. First, there's not many negatives. It's not a bad thing this coming out. I think it's really good, to be honest. And I mean, the positives for me is it's coming 25 games, and I think the downside about the Commodore 64 Mini was there's 50 odd games with it, but you want to play about 4 of them, and you had to load your own games onto it. Now this one, I'm thinking, actually, they're the ones I'd really like to play in sort of the first instance. And I like the fact it comes with a mouse, because to me, gaming on an Amiga was 50% of it was done with the mouse. That's why so many quality games use the mouse.
It's got worms on it as well, so
exactly, and you need a mouse for that, or otherwise it's pointless and impossible to play. But then I also like the fact that it's got this 6-button sort of joypad.
It looks good.
It does actually look good. Let's be real, it's probably not going to be the most comfortable of things, and
possibly not. No,
but it'll do. I'm sure it will do the job. And because what was the issue with me going back to playing Amiga games? It's everything is one button, and and you had to press up to jump. Now that's great when you're 15 and every Amiga game you have to press up to jump. So you're used to doing that. But now that's not how you control games anymore.
The muscle memory has been decimated.
Exactly, it's completely gone. I'm sure you could get the hang of it eventually, but it'll be a bit of a tedious process. So I like the fact that it has got these 6 buttons. So potentially they're not just loading on 24 ROMs or 25 ROMs. There's 25 games that come with it. They're actually going to let's call them A500 Mini special ROMs or whatever. So they're going to have, a button for changing your weapon, or a button for jumping, and a button for action, and it will have some sort of you could sort of play around with the controls a bit. So if you want to press up to jump, you can change to original or change to sort of modern controls, and that's what I like to see, Trev.
Yeah, it'll like map. I think you're right. There'll probably be options to map one of those buttons to a jump, and probably like it'll either do an automatic sort of slant jump, so you sort of jump into a direction, or you just sort of have to manually do it. I mean, I don't know if that will fundamentally, like, some people might like, oh, you've ruined Turrican or something if you like don't hit up to jump. But obviously there was console versions of that game, which I'm sure people played, where it was, I think you'd have to press a button to jump in them. But yeah, it looks good. I think the joypad looks good. I think that there's obviously, they're probably also, they don't seem to be bothered about people, whether they allow people to put their own games on the Commodore 64. I'm not sure if it's been officially confirmed whether you can stick your own games in this. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to, because that'll be kind of the main selling point, will be that, because the Amiga's library is freaking ginormous. You're never going to get away with just sticking 25 games on it and everybody being happy. I mean, my top 2 Amiga games on it, Frontier Elite 2 and Sensible Soccer.
Well, they haven't announced all of them yet, Trev.
I don't think those 2 will be on it somehow. Frontier, you've got...
There's chances are that they won't be.
Yeah.
But,
Elite, I don't think they'll be... Yeah. Elite, I'm not sure. Frontier Developments obviously still make Elite. They make Elite Dangerous. Well, they did release the older Elites as kind of freeware. I'm not sure if that's like, go away and you can do whatever you want, we don't care, or if I'm not sure they'll allow a company to put it on their thing and then sell it.
Profit from it. I think it's
They'll probably want a little bit of some kind of a commission for it, so I'm not sure that'll be on there. Sensible Soccer, but then potentially you'd have to get them. You have to mod the game to get rid of all the teams, or to change the names of the teams. They did that for the Xbox 360 version of Sensible World of Soccer. They took out, Man United are just Manchester Red, and Charlton Athletic are just Charlton. Which is a bit annoying. And I think you can, I can't remember on the 360, you can edit the names back again. But yeah, they'd have to do that. I'm not sure they'll be willing to go to that length. And then Codemasters probably have the rights to that game, so they have to do a deal with them. So I'm not even sure I'm looking at the Facebook post.
Codemasters are bought by EA now, aren't they? So,
oh right, yeah. So
that happened very recently.
So they probably have Sensible Soccer now. God, that's weird. Because they were kind of rivals in the mid-90s, Sensible Soccer and FIFA for a bit. Sensible Soccer was way better than the early 2D FIFAs in my opinion, but so that's not on there. But it's not an issue if you can just sideload that stuff in like people could do with the C64 Mini. I mean, we can look at some of the games that are on there and we can give our quick thoughts on them. I mean, one that's very interesting straight off the list, I think they've released 12 names of games out of the 25. So like you said, Stu, we don't know what the others are. One that actually sticks out to me is Alien Breed 3D. So that was an Amiga 1200 game.
Well, that was the point I was going to make, because they're calling it the A500, but then it's got Alien Breed, and then it's got the what's it called, controller, the one from the CD32 with the same buttons as that. So I think in reality, it's got the Amiga 500 brand name, but they might be dropping ROMs on from the CD32,
which makes sense because
and then you quite often get the extra buttons and basically it'll be, so that raises a question,
Does that mean you'll be able to go into some kind of settings and specify what model Amiga you kind of want to be running when you're using the A500 Mini? You can go into A1200 mode, and it will maybe unlock AGA versions of some of those games, should they exist.
Yeah.
And also, you know, obviously Alien Breed 3D requires an Amiga 1200. Will you be able to boost up the clock speed? I mean, this is quite technical stuff that maybe a lot of your average Joe that just has, you know, nostalgic memories of the Amiga and just sees it in Argos and grabs it to have a quick bash on Zool or, you know, Pinball Dreams or something.
I mean, the way I think it will. Oh, it says on here the Amiga 500 Mini will have full WHD load support. That's good.
Oh right, where was that? Where was that announced?
That was on the Polygon article,
Cool.
polygon.com. Yeah, I just want to sort of find the list of games. So, but
yeah,
yeah,
I've got
so
them here.
I think it will be a really sort of clean menu, and you go in there and you go, okay, here's 12 games, because I don't think they're going to remember. Hold on, this was a 500 game or this was a 1200 game.
No,
To them, it will just be, oh, this is an Amiga game.
they just want to hit it and jump in.
And I don't think anyone's going to, well, we're obviously talking about it, but people are, you know, they'll just sort of click on the games and won't be too fussed about, hold on, this is a 1200 game. This is on a A500 Mini. Oh, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean that brings me to another point. You know what? I'll address that after I've sort of read the rest of the other games. Another World, great game, very difficult but a great game. ATR, All Terrain Racing, pretty good game. Battle Chess, never played it, but I know it's a well-known Amiga game that people are fond of. Cadaver, which is I think a Rare game, or it was, as in literally Rare, the guys that made, you know, Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye. That was one of their earlier games, yeah. I think. A sort of an isometric point and click adventure, I think, like Night Law and all those sort of games. Kickoff 2, a really great football game. We had Dino Dini, the guy that made that game.
I reckon they're not going to have Kickoff 2 and Sensible Soccer on there, are they? Yeah,
I don't think Dino Dini's a fan of SWAS. So you might not want it to be on there too. Plus, SWAS is just better than Kickoff 2. Sorry, Kickoff 2 fans. Sorry, Dino. You probably won't want to come back on now. But yeah, good. Still a good game, though. Still a really good game. And important in the history of football games, you know. Pinball Dreams, freaking brilliant pinball game. One of my favourite Amiga games. Play the crap out of that. Made by DICE, who are obviously now famous for, you know, the Battlefield games these days. But that's where they started. Simon the Sorcerer, a really good point and click adventure. Be interesting if that is the CD32 version, like you've touched upon. Are they going to put CD32 games on it that had like voice? That had a voice over to it. I think Chris Barry was from Red Dwarf, did the voice of Simon in the CD version. I don't know if they're going to be able to easily get, like, if they can run ISO files. Maybe they've got that working, or it's just the disc version. I think that was an A500 game as well as a 1200 game, so we could get any really. Speedball 2 Brutal Deluxe, brilliant game, one of my favorite Amiga games, one of the best probably the best future sports game that's ever come out. That's a great game. Again, I think that had an enhanced CD32 version. So again, interesting to see if that's the one we get. Chaos Engine, really good top-down shooter game. Brilliant game. Again, that had an AGA version. Wonder if we'll get that on this. Worms Director's Cut, brilliant game. Worms, still going to this day, of course. And started on the Amiga, of course. Zool. I don't mind Zool, but I prefer Zool 2 like massively. I think they should put Zool 2 on there really instead of Zool 1.
Yeah, I'm not. To me, it was always, this is the, you know, it's always as good as Sonic, and it never was.
No, very, very European. With the whole
too much was going on, and
too European for its own good. Up to jump. Really difficult to do, to like fire your hand shot thing as well as do a spinny thing. Collect loads of MacGuffins to get to the exit. Bit tedious now, but it still holds up, I think. But maybe it's on there, but we don't know. And that's basically what they've announced so far. But to go back to what you were talking about before, we just went through that list. I've seen like people argue on. I mean, you may be in these as well, but I mean a lot of like Amiga groups on Facebook. So real hardcore people that mod their systems and are deep into that. There's people saying, this is a waste of time. This thing, if you're going to make an Amiga Mini, it has to have, the original chips inside it, and it needs to be able to plug in hard drives and plug in like accelerators, and you have to be able to like, connect choose like what different video outputs you can have, whether it's AGA or retargetable graphics, RTG graphics, and you're able to flip between what kickstart ROM you want to start on.
I think they're really missing the point.
Yeah, massively.
And if this came out and said this is going to be the ultimate Amiga in a box, that you can do everything on an original Amiga plus a lot more, all in one little box, then I think that they're justified. But this is coming out as a box, so you can plug it in your TV and play all of the Amiga classics, and then it sounds like you can sort of side load ROMs onto it, sort of disk files, and then sort of play other games that you want to as well, because one of the things that when I originally saw this, I thought, well, actually, what's the point? I could get a Raspberry Pi, I can do this, I can plug a controller into it, I can do that. And then I was thinking, well, actually, I could do all those things. I haven't done them because obviously it's like, it's a bit of a pain to do all of these things and to set them all up correctly and to get all the control. I just want something out of a box that works. And I can play the games on, and that's where I think it's hit the nail on the head, really.
Yeah, you're right. This appeals to, a huge proportion of the Amiga fan base, even though I say fan base, these are people that I'm going to talk about that might not still be a fan, but I have nostalgic memories. A huge proportion of the people that used an Amiga back in the day when it was a commercial, still an ongoing concern with Commodore around, were people that literally just played games on their Amiga. They did nothing else.
It was a console with a keyboard.
Yeah, it was a console with a keyboard to them. They didn't go and make cool sounding music in tracker software. They didn't go and program in Amos. Didn't write demos. Didn't go to demo parties and swap discs and all that cool stuff that we read about now in all the magazines and everything that people are nostalgic about. The majority of people, probably millions, and myself included, I just played games on it. I messed around in Deluxe Paint a little bit. I think I mucked around in Amos and programmed like some funny little crap games from a listing in a magazine. That was it. 99% of the time I was playing a game. I was interested enough to be able to, want to upgrade the RAM and do bits that will make those games run a bit better. But that was about it, really. I wasn't like making 3D animations or anything. Those are the people that this is targeted at, probably. Well, it is. It's the bloke that's going to rock in, isn't on groups, doesn't check up on doesn't go on Indie Retro News to see what the newest Amiga homebrew is. Probably had an Amiga between maybe 1988 to 1993, when got Mega Drive, PlayStation, and PlayStation 2, and so on. They're the sort of people that they want to put this on shelves in Asda. So someone, when they're on their weekly shop with the wife, going around with the 2.4 children in the shopping basket, they'll be passing the electronics section. They'll see a lovely big box, Amiga 500 Mini, and they'll get a hit of nostalgia. Think, I had that when I was 12. I used to play. I played like Super Frog and like Arabian Nights and Sensible Soccer. I'll 100 quid or 130, whatever it is. I'll grab that. In fact, how much is it? It's already available to pre-order.
I think it's $140. So I think the UK price is £120. So
$119.99. Yeah. So they see that price. They say, I'll grab that. I'll pop it in the telly. Get my mates around, have a couple of beers, and then it's like almost like a Wii. Unfortunately, is a casual thing that they can whack in, get a nostalgia hit, probably, and occasionally they'll bring it out. That's who this is aimed at. So yeah. Is that how you see it, Stu, as well?
Yeah, 100%. The only way I'll sort of disagree with you on that point is if you look about the NES Mini, that was $49.99, and the SNES Mini was maybe $59.99.
Yeah,
and the Mega Drive one, they're all around that kind of price.
It's not Christmas stocking filler territory,
no,
is it? Yeah.
I think it's a little bit more. To me, the price is higher than those, and at the moment he's like, well, got that. That's a little bit higher, but then it does come with a mouse. And okay, well, it's, how much is a mouse these days? And then it comes
Yeah.
with the keyboard as well. So part of me thinks, well, actually, it is a little bit pricey, but if it's a good package and it does what it says, and I'm terrible for sort of watching reviews and things and saying, oh, there's a little bit of lag on the Chaos engine, or there's
Yeah.
there's a bit of shimmering, when it goes through the HDMI and it upscales to 1080i incorrectly or something.
Retro RGB and my life game has ruined retro consoles for us, and the cheapo solutions we've been using.
He has a little bit, but sometimes, from I think it looks good.
Are you going to get one?
I haven't pre-ordered it yet. I've seen it on Amazon. I haven't pre-ordered it.
Do you actually sort of play Amiga games at present in any way at all?
I don't. Well, I think we talked about. I'm the biggest Amiga fan, but I just haven't got the setup to have an Amiga set up, if that makes sense. Because if it was in my living room, it would be into the wrong TV. It would look awful. There'd be wires all over the floor, and my girlfriend wouldn't be too happy about that. And now, at the moment, for the last year, I've been using my spare room as an office for work. So I've got my laptop next to my own computer, and I've got a CRT in here with a PlayStation 2 and a GameCube and a few other bits and bobs. But I think actually having a keyboard, I actually sort of need a proper big desk and a dedicated space to have it, and then I think I'll go down that route. So actually, that's more of a reason that this Amiga 500 Mini will actually be a perfect little sort of way to. And I used to play Worms for hours. It was a brilliant game.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I mean, just like throw a disclaimer out there for any like super mega hardcore Amiga modding people that might be listening. I'm I get into that to an extent, but not to the absolute ultimate. I mean, I do play Amiga games, still mostly through WHD load through WinUAE on my gaming PC these days. Because it's a pain to set up, but if you can get like a pre-built hard drive image, a HDF file that's got all the games already loaded, there are ways to get these preloaded hard drive images with WHD load already set up. You can kind of then inject that into WinUAE, boot it up, and you've basically got yourself an Amiga experience. And being on a PC, I've already got a wireless keyboard and a mouse, so I don't necessarily have to have the device sat on my lap. I just have a wireless keyboard and a mouse, and I can got all the functionality that I need. Really, I do have real Amigas as well, but they're like you say, they're not really. They don't lend themselves to unless you've got an extra spare room where you can have a man cave set up, and you can have like as much as the idea is nice, some men probably, and women or whoever have these things are quite happy to have a man cave where I don't know what they do. I mean, do they literally go and disappear into it every evening and just play games all night away from their family? Do they invite them in and they all just hang out in there as opposed to their living room? I don't really know how they kind of live with a man cave,
That's a good question. Actually, we could do an episode on that. How do you? Because people, you always see on YouTube, people have these amazing sort of rooms. They have all their consoles set up, and I always think, wow, they look amazing. I would love that. But then, in reality, is real life takes over, and I'm working from home at the moment. When I was working in the office, I'd finish in the office at 6. Maybe go to the gym, get on the train, get home, maybe home at 7:30. You put your feet up, you have your dinner, watch something on TV, and then you go to bed. I thought, hold on, now I'm going to go into it. It's almost like it's not sort of too conducive to life, really.
No, I mean, with COVID and working from home, so I work from home now basically full time. So technically, I've got more time to maybe have something like that. I mean, I can't because we haven't got a room that we could set that up. But I'm not sure. I'd have a separate room where I'd have everything stored. I'd rather have it because I have to use my living room for a lot of that. But in terms of like somewhere where I disappear to play games, I wouldn't really want to do that because I actually kind of want to hang out with my girlfriend, after work. I don't want to just, say, oh, finish work. I'll see you later. I'll see you at dinner. I'm going to go and play my Amiga in my man cave now for 3 hours. I don't, that doesn't appeal to
I
me.
think, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I found that, working from home for the last year, it'll get to actually 6 o'clock, and then I'll go into the living room and I'll play my Xbox for an hour.
Yeah, but
And
you
that
have
was
that in your
something
living room.
I never actually
Yeah,
did before, but it was all done in my living room. And then recently, I think I mentioned in the last podcast, I've been playing a lot on. I sort of rediscovered the Switch because
yeah,
got one on day one, absolutely loved it, and then it's sort of got put to the side a little bit, and I sort of picked up again and thought, oh, actually, I haven't completed this game, and got back into it, and I'm finding now that it's great. These games I might play at 6 o'clock for an hour on my Switch on the TV. Then maybe 11 o'clock, I'll off to bed, and I'll play it for another sort of half an hour, and it's worked out really quite. I don't know, it just sort of fits into my life a little bit more.
yeah.
The Switch.
Yeah, and when you get into that, we've both been with our other halves for quite some years now, like over a
Mm,
decade, I think. But
mm,
both of us. When you get into that domestic bliss kind of mode, it's just nice to be able to sit in the living room, go about your rest of your evening, not necessarily
mm,
chatting all night or anything, you're just watching telly and hanging out. It's nice to be able to do that, and it's nice to spend time with your other half. And
yeah.
so it doesn't. I mean, I know I have a setup in my living room where I've got a separate, smaller TV that I can wheel out and I can play Xbox while my girlfriend watches her stuff on the main TV, or we can both be watching. I can have something on in the background that I don't need to necessarily focus 100% on. I could still play a game at the same time,
Mm,
keep the volume down. Like a FIFA, I could just mute the audio completely. And we can have whatever football match we need to watch that night on in the background, or we watch a lot of wrestling. We can watch the wrestling in the background because, again, that's something you need to be like, sat and just watching and be focused on. So I like that. What we're saying is an Amiga setup isn't really conducive to that. You need to be able to be sat in front of it, near it, so you can, but I'm sure people will say, yeah, but if you put it in a tower case, you can get wireless keyboards and USB and everything now. But it's like,
yeah.
I can't be bothered to get all that stuff. So, yeah, that's why this definitely does appeal to me. But there is kind of a second thing that's come up now where people have seen what has happened with the C64 Mini. That I think like a year later they brought out a C64. It was called the C64, but we'll call it the C64 Maxi.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was something they always planned to do, or if that was something that came from popular demand. It could be either way. They kind of felt that maybe we'll throw the Mini out there for the super casual people, and we'll make like a Maxi for people who are sort of the hobby people, shall we say, side of it. So people are now thinking that, you know what, I like this, but I would rather get a full-size recreation of the Commodore Amiga 500 with a working keyboard.
Mm.
Where do you sort of stand on that sort of thought?
Well, it almost sort of. I think the one with the keyboard would be better, but then you've got the issue of sort of space. So part of me would like to, the Mini to come out, and then potentially, you get some sort of special USB keyboard with, it's got the Amiga buttons on there.
Yeah,
What was it? The 10 function keys.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's actually, or you can just plug a USB keyboard into it, and then the Windows button will be the Amiga button, and so on. I think that's how it should be, really. And so it seems to me a bit silly to well, not silly, but I wouldn't really want to go for the large keyboard version, just because that would actually just take up so much space. And but then to
Yeah.
have a little, maybe a wireless keyboard, and then you can have that on your lap, and do any sort of keyboard stuff that you need to do with it, and then have the mouse in the other hand, or the joypad in the other hand, would be absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I think the larger size, a full size Amiga recreation. I mean, the Amiga 500 is quite big, isn't it? I mean, it's bigger than the Commodore. A full size C64 probably worked better because it wasn't that big in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. The people forget quite how big the Amiga 500 is.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Even how big the Commodore Amiga 600 is. That's still a pretty big machine. And so for me, maybe some sort of official keyboard that you can sort of plug in. For me, that's the only thing that is missing. And potentially, well, we know it's got USB ports on there for well, actually we don't know, but it's got USB ports on there for the mouse and the joypad. So potentially you can just plug a USB keyboard in there, and away you go.
I think it'll have that functionality. I think you could do that with the C64. I think you could hook up a keyboard via USB, and then you could potentially have it in your nice IKEA TV unit and sit away from it and be able to use it. It's interesting. Sorry, go on. Yeah,
I was going to say, if that news report that I've just read on Polygon is correct, that you can sideload games. The thing is, with Amiga games, so many times you have to press the space bar, you have to press buttons on the keyboard for them to work. And
yeah.
I think people will be very, very annoyed if it goes, oh yeah, it's good, but I can't play X or Y because I have to press 1 or 2 for 1 and 2 players, or I have to do this. And I think having an option to plug in a $4.99 keyboard or something like that, which could be that little bit more sort of flexibility and more compatibility with other games.
Yeah, I mean, something like Frontier Elite 2, you kind of do need a keyboard. Although they did make, there was a CD32 version of Frontier Elite 2, which just used the joypad completely, but it was a bit janky because the interface wasn't really. They didn't rebuild the interface to make it perfectly work with the joypad. So there you could maybe get away if you use that version, but what we're saying is there are a huge proportion of flight sims, obviously need a keyboard. I mean, it's a very large system already. I don't know if that would mean if they went on to make Maxi versions, which I think they mentioned that they were going to do it on their Facebook posts. I think they also showed a really interesting statistic that showed like 80% of the sales, the total combined sales of the C64s that they brought out, 80% of those were just for the Mini, and 20% was the Maxi. So
really,
yeah, I think it goes to show that the hobbyists obviously go for the Maxi, and then the general fan base goes for the Mini. And I think there will probably be a similar proportion for the Amiga, because the hobbyist hardcore element of the fan base is much smaller than like the general people who use the Amiga and would be interested in getting a recreation of it. It'll probably be a similar proportion. I could be wrong, but I think if they did make,
Let's talk about the sort of the hardware inside, and I don't think they've announced anything from what I've seen. But
no.
What do you think? Will it be sort of an FPGA type situation, or will it be a Raspberry Pi but just under another name? Or
I think the C64 Mini and Maxi, I think they had an ARM chip inside them.
Right. Okay, yeah.
So it wasn't an FPGA. I think it was running some kind of custom emulator. I think they I think they licensed, or I don't know, maybe you don't need to license Vice, but Vice is the most popular Commodore 64 emulators, and they obviously had an operating system running on that ARM chip that ran Vice. and that's how it ran all the games and everything with like an overlaid like interface that was custom designed for the C64 Mini and Maxi. So it'd probably be the same sort of thing, although the Amiga obviously needs a lot more power to run, to be accurate, because the Amiga was very powerful, but way more powerful than the Commodore 64, but it had a lot of custom chips.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so trying to make sure all those chips, are running correctly and, doing the right things to make sure the games are running accurately might need a bit more oomph than what they were using already in the C64 Mini and Maxi.
It's that person that should not be named. He was probably on the show a couple of years ago, or if not longer, and he mentioned as if it was coming out imminently. It's going to be announced, a week on Friday. That's from what I remember.
Yeah.
And of course, it's now 2 years later, or even 3 years, or 2.5 years, something like that. It's a long time on, and now it's just been announced. So that suggests that hopefully a lot of work has gone into, well, let's make sure that this works properly. And I don't want to see an AtGames sort of machine and that's just corners are cut, and part of me is actually pleased about the price, because it's £120. So that to me is the difference between putting in a $5 chip off the shelf, and to actually go, okay, well, we're going to go down the route of getting a £15 or £20 processor, and which with the faster clock speed that can do more, that can give you the opportunity, because you got to think about that. If it's actually playing 1200 games, which a couple of them are, then that's a 68020 processor, and from what I remember,
it'll need even more power.
The Alien Breed games, they're a little bit unusual, because they had all sort of options. You could make the screen wider, you could update the details and things like that, much like you can do on PCs now. And I remember having my stock 1200. I used to have to play these games in a little letterbox in the middle of the screen, and if I actually go, oh, okay, let's play it full screen, it was like a slideshow. And it was awful. So part of me thinks, well, actually, they might almost be emulating a 68040 to make things like Alien Breed more enjoyable than what it was on a stock 1200.
Yeah, to be honest, I think you probably should target like an 030 Amiga 1200, I think, probably running at about 25 megahertz. And that would cover any classic Amiga game. You could throw it in and it'll run it fairly well, even like Alien Breed 3D. I think there was an Alien Breed 3D too as well. And obviously, you're covered with the AGA versions of games as well. There were some issues back in the day where some of the older Amiga games wouldn't run on a 1200 because they wanted Kickstart, 1.2 or 1.3. But I think the WHD load versions of those games are fixed, so they'll just run on a 1200. And in fact, WHD load has fixed all kinds of things that weren't working from games back in the day. Like if they, things like if they had just general bugs that caused them to crash. Like I said, if they wouldn't run on a 1200 or Kickstart 3.0, which 1200 introduced, being able to use a second button to jump. Some of the games, actually, the WHD load versions have added that. Ways to quit back to Workbench from a keyboard shortcut. They added that. Although I think whatever OS or interface they developed for this, the Amiga 500 Mini, I think that will just have a quit to the menu when it, of course, it will, and load save states and load states.
I think if you on that article, the controller has got a start. I think it's got a home button as well. Yeah, menu and home. Trevor, I've lost you. You're on mute.
So, God, that's a phrase I've heard a lot, haven't we? Like lately.
You're on mute, mate.
You're on mute, mate.
You're on mute. Yeah.
It's like being at work again.
You're on mute.
It's been a work meeting.
Oh no. The times I've been shouting at the screen and going, you're on mute.
It's even worse on a podcast when you need to listen to people. For me, if I knew they weren't making a Maxi, I probably would get this. But there was a recent Facebook post where they said it's definitely in their plans to make a Maxi. And that, I think I would pre-order that instantly, because for me that would replace all, the physical Amigas that I've got. It would kind of make those a bit redundant, because they're difficult to set up, like we're saying. You've got the old power supplies to contend with. If the caps are still fine, you need to recap them. You're relying on floppy disks. You don't get any of the quality of life stuff. No save states, leaking batteries, having to boost them up to get certain games to run with RAM and accelerators.
I think for me, it's a case of, well, actually, I'm not going to. I'm not going to pre-order it. I think I am going to wait for the reviews.
Yeah,
and then actually, if they're positive, then I think the things I need confirmation on are, is it going to be compatible with typical USB keyboards? Can you just plug one in and away you go? And then also trying to understand actually what is the hardware in there, and if I start putting ROMs onto it, well, how easy will that be to do? And then also will the potentially the sort of the disk swapping side of it, how will that be done? And just sort of understanding sort of the mechanics behind it, because we've got to think at the moment all we've seen is half the games and a 1 minute video.
Yeah.
So it could be one of those, like the Spectrum Vega or some of these that Intellivision Amico thing, and oh god, that's driving me insane.
Yeah. I mean,
have you seen much about that?
Oh yeah, I have. I mean, that needs a whole hour on itself. You only need to pattern Ian's podcast to sort of get a good lowdown on how that's going. But
are they fans of it, or they don't like it?
I think they love it. I think they really love it. No, I'm joking. They absolutely think it's ridiculous, like most other people.
I've got to go off topic again, Trev. I'm watching this guy on YouTube, and he's the nicest guy in the world. He really is sneztastic.
I know that dude.
And he's 10 out of 10. He's brilliant, nicest guy in the world. And for some reason, every video he's doing at the moment, he's like, the brilliant Intellivision Amico. Oh yeah, Tommy.
Tallarico.
Tommy Tallarico, but he calls him Tommy.
Yeah, Uncle Tommy.
Oh, Tommy is, and then here's a game, and I'll show you some exclusive footage of it. And you're looking at it, and it looks like an iPhone game from 2 years ago. And it's like, oh,
it looks terrible.
It just looks amazing. It's just, I love 2D platformers, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't look great. Oh,
the control looks horrific as well to control any game with.
Great,
yeah,
and I don't think the world needs it, and I don't know. It's not for me, and but
it's a big contrast. I mean, this is something that it's an interesting point, because it's a big contrast, because this is something that's clearly going to get released, and
they delivered it before, didn't they? So
yeah, they've got a clear track record. But for me, knowing that it looks like there's potentially a Maxi coming out, it'd be interesting if they decide to maybe do different variations, and there's a 1200 looking version or a 600 looking version. That would be interesting. I doubt it. I think it'll just be another 500, which is fine. I love the Amiga 500. It was my first Amiga. Still got it now. My childhood one I've still got.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like yellow to all get out, but it still works. Plugged it in a few months ago. It died maybe now, but a few months ago it worked fine. But yeah, I haven't modded it or done anything. To sort out the battery, of course, the leaking battery, but apart from that. But what I'm trying to say, a Maxi for me will be like a jack of all trades. It can be, I'll just be able to, if I can load up the entire WHD load sort of library of every classic Amiga game and stick that on it, that'd be perfect. I'll be able to use it, whether I want to have it just in a unit and it just plugged into HDMI with using a wireless controller, it can do that for me. If I want to if I get a craving just to have a nice little desk set up sometime with a nice HDMI screen, and actually use it like a classic Amiga because it's got a real keyboard. It'll be good enough for that. It'll have all the quality of life stuff that WHD or that WinUAE has. I'm sure people will mod it and make it even better, and jailbreak it and do all kinds of stuff,
option, isn't it?
So for me, it might even be like the best out of all these remake consoles. It might be the best one that ever could have come out for me, being a big Amiga fan. Oh, I would love like a Dreamcast and a Saturn, but that's never going to happen. They're too niche. The Amiga is technically niche, but weirdly, the people that are fans of it, like us, we're more rabid and are more willing to sort of put money down on stuff. So maybe it's a more of a reliable stream of money than chucking a Dreamcast out that only appealed to the 10 million people that bought a Dreamcast. Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but I'm going to wait for a Maxi, which might be a couple of years away, but we'll have to wait and see. Is that what so you wouldn't get a Maxi?
No, I want to wait until the reviews. But I mean, if the Max Amiga, the large one, if that's full size, it's going to be the same things as what I mentioned before. It's just going to be actually sort of too big. So
yeah, it'll be big if it's a recreation. Yeah,
it's just going to be sort of too big. So I wouldn't mind them doing a large Max version, but somehow in a
like a 75% size almost.
75%, or take off the keypad, and make it. I
mean, you could do a 600. An Amiga 600 isn't terribly big.
I mean, that is still
it's still chunky, but yeah.
But what you got to do is almost like make it look like an Amiga console. It doesn't have to be It doesn't have to be an exact copy of an Amiga 500, because I think that will be absolutely huge. And these things you pick up, and they're so light because they've only got a little board in the middle these days.
Yeah.
But actually, if you had something,
they put weights in them, I think,
on
normally,
it, and was inspired by like an Amiga 500 or an Amiga 1200, I think that would be the perfect sort of jump off point between having a massive sort of Amiga 500, which they are large, and then sort of a tiny one with no keyboard, having something in between. It's actually inspired by the classic design of the Amiga.
I think it'd be good. I mean, I doubt they've got enough scope or funds or whatever to do this, but I think having a few options would be a cool thing. Because I'd be worried that if they were like, we're doing a Maxi, but it's going to be 70% the size, there'd be people that would complain about that. They'd be like, no, I want a full size. I want the exact dimensions of the original.
And then there'll be people going, actually, this one's too big, and it's computers aren't this size anymore. So imagine if they did like an MS-DOS box, and they thought, okay, it has to come into a Maxi,
IBM PC Mini,
ATX tower, or something. Oh, I can only play if it's an ATX tower.
Gateway 2000 Mini.
Yeah, exactly. And it can fit in some people's houses. Of course, it can, but in reality, something much smaller would be good. And even imagine an Amiga 500 Mini with a keyboard. It's also a laptop.
Yeah,
with a screen on it.
Yeah, they never made Amiga laptops back in the day. There was weirdly Atari ST laptops, but there was never Amiga ones.
No.
Like I said, lots of options would be nice. I don't think that's going to happen. It'd be cool if they made like, we're doing an Amiga 1200, which is obviously a little bit smaller. So that might appeal to other people at 600. Yeah.
Another thing I'd like to see, and carrying on with the point, is like the Raspberry Pi. They're a set size, and imagine you can buy cases with keyboards and things like that, because that's what
recreate those,
and then you can buy a keyboard that sits in a case which is the shape of Amiga, and then you can pop in the insides of the Amiga 500 Mini into that, and so then you can actually make it sort of the system that you want. Yeah,
maybe there'll be a little bit of a cottage industry will pop up around
special
these
cases
minis.
And
Yeah.
You know, buy a 600 case, buy a 1200 case, or
I think there's an element of that, a little bit of an element of that with the various minis we've had, like the PlayStation Mini and the Mega Drive Mini. There's little cases and stuff. I think it's more of a thing that would explode with the Amiga Mini because the fan base is there's so many hobbyists and so many niche sort of things, and people already make these things for the actual Amigas already with the the hardware that comes out, the accelerators. There's more of a scope for that within the Amiga community, I think. But yeah, I think we're both kind of excited about it. It'll just, I think neither of us are going to be getting the Mini on day one, it looks like. We'll see what the reviews are. I think it's great news. I think it's always great to have more options when it comes to the Amiga, especially as the original hardware can be very difficult to work with these days without spending lots of money. You spend lots of money to get a knackered 500, that's been sun damaged and there's caps leaking everywhere. So, yeah, I think this is a great solution to that. But anyway, on that note, Stu, where can you find us on the interwebs?
Interwebs. Oh, one thing I want to announce. I've got my certificate for my two jabs.
Yeah, you're holding it up to a camera, but this is a podcast, so...
Yeah, can you see
Stu's holding up a podcast. Stu's holding up a certificate.
Certificate. I've got my...
For everybody listening.
My certificate, so I can leave the country.
Nice one.
And all of that. Anyway, where can you find us, Trev? That was the question, wasn't it?
That was a bit of a segue, but yeah.
A bit of a segue. It's about COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, consoleshock.net is our website. You can find us on any podcast client, so iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Google Podcast Store, I think it is now. And find us on there. You can find us on Twitter under Console Shock. You can find us on YouTube, search Console Shock, and we've got a Facebook page as well, Console Shock. So please leave us any comments on there, and we love reading them and sort of giving feedback. And also look out for our second most viewed video. It's always worth listening to that one.
Yeah, or not. That's fine as well.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, Stu, and thank you everybody for listening. As always, take care, and we will see you in the next one.